Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Great. Today we're heading to Middle-earth, the world of Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. We've got excerpts from The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, The Return of the King,
Of course, can't forget those.
and even some of Tolkien's appendices.
Hmm.
So much to unpack.
Definitely a treasure trove of material. Always something new to discover with Tolkien, I find.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I wanted to start with something that really struck me. The descriptions of Hobbit life, especially in The Fellowship of the Ring.
Ah, the Shire.
Yes. It just seems so idyllic. Like, who wouldn't want to live in a place where your biggest worry is running out of pipeweed?
Right.
But then you see this contrast, right? This peaceful Shire, and then the growing darkness in the outside world. It makes you wonder, is Tolkien using the Shire to say something bigger?
I think he is. The Shire, especially as it's described in Fellowship, it's more than just a peaceful place. It represents innocence, a simpler way of life.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
And by contrasting it with the threat of Sauron, Tolkien really highlights what's at stake. It's not just about defeating some evil, it's about protecting something precious.
So the Shire isn't just a setting, it's almost symbolic.
Exactly. And this symbolism, it even extends to characters like Farmer Maggot.
Oh, interesting. I always found him a bit intimidating.
Right. He seems scary to young Frodo at first, but then, in that excerpt you've got from Fellowship, we see him being incredibly kind later on.
Right, right.
He becomes a symbol of the Shire's resilience and that strength you find in ordinary people.
Huh. I never thought of it that way. But you're right, there's more to him than just being, well, a grumpy farmer. And, his connection to the land,
Yeah.
it made me think, does he represent something about the hobbits and how they relate to nature?
That's a brilliant observation, actually. Hobbits are deeply connected to the land, and Farmer Maggot, he embodies that.
I see, like a guardian of the Shire.
Exactly. And that connection to nature, it's a theme that runs throughout the entire trilogy. We'll see it play out in different ways as we go.
Makes sense. And even in this peaceful Shire, the ring's influence is already there, isn't it?
Definitely.
We see Frodo struggling. He wants that simple Shire life, but there's also that pull towards adventure, just like Bilbo.
Yeah, that internal struggle is so important for understanding the ring's power. And if we jump ahead a bit to the Two Towers and look at Gollum,
Oh, Gollum.
his obsession with the precious, it's completely transformed him. It's not just about wanting the ring. It's about how it twists you, corrupts you.
It's pretty terrifying when you think about it. Even Gandalf, who's this incredibly wise wizard, he's afraid of the ring.
And that fear is what makes him such a fantastic mentor. In everything we've got here, we see him constantly warning others about the ring. But he doesn't try to control the Fellowship. He guides them.
Right. Through riddles and hints.
Exactly. He makes them think for themselves. It's a much more nuanced kind of leadership.
And speaking of leadership, we see Aragorn, who we know is a reluctant king in Fellowship. But then in the Two Towers, he seems pretty keen to get to Gondor and take his place. How does that fit in?
Well, Aragorn's whole journey is about embracing destiny. He does hesitate at first. The weight of his lineage, those expectations, it's a lot to carry.
Sure.
But as the story unfolds, he realizes he can't escape his fate. It's not just about wanting the throne, it's about taking on the responsibility that comes with it.
It's like that classic hero's journey, but with so much more depth to it.
Absolutely.
And then there's Eowyn, defying all those expectations. She's a shield maiden, wants glory, wants to be her own person, but she's in this world dominated by men.
Eowyn is such a powerful character, even today. She's fighting for her place in a world that tries to define her. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling, wanting something more than what's expected.
Totally. And that's what I love about Tolkien's work. It's not just a fantasy adventure. It's full of these timeless themes.
You're right, it's about human nature.
Exactly.
And good versus evil, well, it isn't as simple as it seems on the surface. You've got these nuanced characters, these moral dilemmas. It makes you think about what it really means to be good in a world where evil is everywhere.
Right. And then there's this idea of courage, of resilience, especially with the hobbits. I mean, they face so much fear, so much hardship, but they never give up.
Yeah, the hobbits are amazing. In the Two Towers and the Return of the King, they really show us that even the smallest person can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And of course, there's the friendship, the loyalty between them. The Fellowship is such a powerful example of that.
They really embody the power of community, that idea that we're stronger together, especially when things get tough.
Their whole journey really proves that. Okay, but let's move on to something else that always amazes me about Tolkien. The world building. It's so intricate, so detailed. It's almost overwhelming.
Well, that's what those appendices are for. They give us all that background on Middle-earth, the different cultures, the languages. You really see how deep Tolkien's imagination ran.
Yeah, and it's not just made up stuff either. He actually created entire languages with grammar and history, all based on his background as a philologist. The level of detail is incredible. For example, in the appendices, he even invented different kinds of pipeweed, each with their own backstories.
It's true, and all that detail, it brings Middle-earth to life. You really feel like you could step into this world.
Absolutely.
And it's reflected in people who live there, right?
Yeah.
Men, elves, dwarves, hobbits, each with their own traditions and ways of life.
It's like he took inspiration from all these myths and legends, but then made it something completely new.
Tolkien loved languages, history, and those languages he created, they weren't just for fun. They had real grammar, history. It all adds to that feeling of authenticity.
Yeah. It makes me think about the impact The Lord of the Rings has had. I mean, it's influenced so many books, movies, even video games.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the grandfather of modern fantasy. So many of the things we see in fantasy today, those tropes, those characters, they started with Tolkien.
The epic quest, the wise wizard, the noble hero, they're everywhere. But Tolkien did something more than just create a formula. He gave us these deeper themes that still resonate with people today.
Exactly. It's not just about the fantasy. It's about good versus evil, about courage, about sacrifice, about friendship. These are things that everyone can relate to no matter who you are or where you come from.
And he brings those themes to life through these amazing characters. I mean, Gandalf, Aragorn, Samwise Gamgee.
Each character has their own voice, their own personality. You really feel like you know them. Even the villains, like Saruman. You understand why they do what they do, even if you hate them for it.
That complexity is part of what makes it so interesting, right? Tolkien wasn't afraid to show that his characters weren't perfect, even the heroes.
It makes them more human, more relatable. We see them struggle, we see them make mistakes, but we also see them overcome challenges. And that's inspiring.
And speaking of journeys, I mean, the Fellowship, they travel across all of Middle-earth. It's not just a physical journey, though, is it?
No, it's so much more than that. It's a metaphor for life itself. With all the ups and downs, the dangers, the unexpected turns, along the way, the characters, they face all kinds of trials, physical, mental, emotional, and through those trials, they grow, they learn, they discover who they really are.
And the different places they go, they almost seem to reflect what's happening inside them, don't they? The Shire, all peaceful and beautiful, and then Mordor, dark and desolate.
Each location has its own atmosphere, and Tolkien uses that to really enhance the story, the emotions.
Yeah, like Lothlorien, the Elven realm. It's this place of magic and wonder, almost a safe haven from the harsh world outside. The way Tolkien describes it, you can practically feel yourself there.
Tolkien, he really was a master with words. The way he describes things, the landscapes, the battles, even what the characters are feeling inside, he pulls you right into the heart of the story.
Like in The Two Towers when Treebeard describes the Ents and their history, it's like he's telling a poem.
Exactly. That's Tolkien's love for language shining through. He understood the power of words, how they can transport you to another world.
And he wasn't afraid to use his own experiences either. I mean, his time in World War I, that definitely influenced his writing, especially those themes of loss, of fellowship, the horrors of war.
War is a constant presence in The Lord of the Rings. And Tolkien knew firsthand what it could do to people, to entire societies. That understanding, it adds a whole other level to the story.
It's like he poured all that pain, all that hope into this epic battle between good and evil.
And that's why it connects with people on such a deep level. It's about the human experience, the capacity for both good and evil, and the importance of fighting for what's right, even when it seems impossible.
The impact of The Lord of the Rings goes way beyond just fantasy. It's in music, in art, even in how we talk.
It's become part of our culture, a shared mythology. And it's not just about orcs and elves, it's about courage, about hope, about the strength of the human spirit.
Those are things that speak to everyone, right? No matter your background or your culture.
Exactly. And in a world that can feel so chaotic, so uncertain, The Lord of the Rings gives us hope. It reminds us that even in the darkest times, good can win. That we're not alone in our struggles, that there's strength in unity, and that even the smallest act of courage can make a difference.
A powerful message. You know, I've been thinking about this as we've been talking, how Tolkien uses nature in The Lord of the Rings. It's not just scenery.
No, it's definitely more than that.
It's like nature itself is part of the story.
Yeah.
Like with the Ents.
The
In The Two Towers, they end up playing a crucial role in the fight against Saruman, right?
Right.
And they represent something, don't they? Like the power of nature, but also its vulnerability.
Absolutely, they've been around for ages, witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations.
Exactly. And they have this ancient wisdom.
Mm.
But they're also threatened by Saruman and his industry.
It's a great point. And that tension between nature's power and its fragility, it runs throughout the story.
It does. And then you have the horses of Rohan. Those aren't just animals, are they?
Not at all. They're companions, symbols of freedom.
And their connection to the land.
Exactly. You see that incredible bond between the riders and their horses. It speaks to Tolkien's respect for nature and that idea that everything's connected.
And in The Return of the King, how the riders grieve for their horses just as much as for their human comrades.
It's a powerful moment.
It is. Okay, so what about the eagles? They always seem to show up right when things are at their worst, like some kind of divine intervention.
Right, saving the day.
But if they're so powerful, why not just fly the ring to Mordor? It seems like that would solve everything.
That's a question a lot of people have. But the eagles, they represent something bigger, a higher power.
Okay.
But they also have their own rules. Their involvement, it's not random. It's part of a larger plan, a destiny that's unfolding.
So it's like there are these forces beyond our understanding, but they don't necessarily do what we want them to.
Exactly. And nature itself, it's a reflection of that. You have these beautiful, idyllic places like the Shire, like Lothlorien, symbols of peace and harmony. But then you have Mordor, the Dead Marshes, places of darkness and decay.
Like a visual representation of the struggle between good and evil.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a reminder that we have a responsibility to protect nature. The fate of Middle-earth, it's tied to the fate of the environment.
It makes you think. We've talked a lot about Tolkien and fantasy, but his influence goes way beyond that, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You see it everywhere. Movies, music, video games. The Lord of the Rings has become part of our culture.
I think it's because it's still so relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Those themes, good versus evil, courage, sacrifice, friendship, they're universal. They speak to everyone.
They do. And in a world that can feel so overwhelming sometimes, The Lord of the Rings gives us hope. It reminds us that even when things are dark, good can still triumph, that we're not alone in our struggles, and that even the smallest act of courage can make a difference.
It's a powerful message. And that about wraps up our deep dive into The Lord of the Rings.
It's been a pleasure exploring these texts with you.
It really has. And even though we covered so much, I feel like we've only scratched the surface of Tolkien's world.
There's always more to discover.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so amazing. You can revisit it again and again and always find something new. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring Middle-earth. Keep asking questions. Keep that spirit of adventure alive.
And may the road go ever on.